Good morning, everybody. I like to always start by saying thank you very much to Kent Police, without whom I wouldn't have the pleasure of meeting you all today. But I'll tell you that story on another occasion. I am Georgina Halford-Hall, and I always get it off my chest by saying I'm a whistleblower and I don't go anywhere without it. It is available to be borrowed. I find myself here having gone from being arrested and a lawbreaker to now in what is a very privileged position of being somebody who is influencing and helping, I hope, to make further laws. And I hope that this will be not the first time that I have the great opportunity to come and talk to you about all of this. Today is a real milestone day for me, because the all-party parliamentary group, of which I'm really proud to be involved with, has got its very first backbench debate in the House of Commons, and it's going to be televised and the press will be there. I'm sure that there'll be whistleblowers there with all sorts of varying views and ideas, and I understand there's to be a demonstration, so I'm rather pleased that I'm here and not there. But I will be going back over there shortly, so forgive me for not hanging around too long at lunchtime. I've got a few more speeches to amend for our members. But I believe in audience participation. So many people, and I suppose all these empty seats represent the ones who perhaps feel that whistleblowing is catching or contagious, that I like to start with a couple of questions and get you in the mood for this. Who in the room has got a company whistleblowing policy? Okay. Who's read it? That's quite good. Who would trust it? Who would use it? Slightly slower. The point I make here is that in 2017, I got invited over to BEIS. I like to call it Beige these days, one of the government departments for business and industry and enterprise and skills. And these 47 heads asked me to go and talk to them about, look, how do you look after whistleblowers? How do you nurture them? How do you manage them? And I asked them those questions to start off. Needless to say, we didn't get very far, because only 3 people in the room volunteered an answer. So that was my maths are rubbish, 44 people who were looking embarrassed. The first person who jumped out of their seat was from the nuclear industry, and they quite clearly had a policy, knew it and understood it. Somebody else, bear in mind we've had Clapham and a few other quite awful disasters in this country around transport, from the Department for Transport, said that they knew that the policy existed, but they weren't quite sure and probably wouldn't want to use it anyway. And the most interesting of all of the responses I got was, I have staff to do that for me. And I believe that if I repeated that exercise now, even with all of the attention that whistleblowing has attracted over the last few years, that little would have changed. Because so often, people think that whistleblowing is for somebody else. So what I'm here to do today is to try and put some positioning around this, because what I have seen is that organisations have got what one of my great mates at the BBC calls an autoimmune response to whistleblowers. That somebody says something, they do a Michael Woodford, and the organisation closes down. What I'd like to do today is leave you with is some thoughts of mine about how we change the paradigm. Whistleblowers are just ordinary people doing their job. I know that I was just an ordinary person. They're neither heroes or villains. We love all this language, don't we? We try and dress it up as something. Courageous. I've been called courageous so often. The only thing that was courageous about everything I've done is the amount of money I've had to spend to do it. Just to pay legal bills. It takes a huge amount of courage. It's a real leap of faith. And then you don't get any guarantee of any quality, as I've also found, and one of the areas that we work with whistleblowers on all the time. So the purpose of this for me is about how we normalise. Speaking out in an organisation should be nothing more than a conversation. It shouldn't be a shouting match. It shouldn't be, I am loyal to this person. We all have a responsibility to organisations, and people who are directors of them, they have a responsibility to the organisation. They are not the organisation. So it's about shifting this paradigm. It's really about leadership and being part of a bigger society that we want to be proud of. And I hope that we'll have some time to come back to some of that. So in the UK, employment tribunals have been really nothing more for whistleblowers than a cash generator for lawyers. A lot of my best friends are lawyers, but I say this unashamedly. The legal profession advise whistleblowers, and I sit with them several times every week, that the employment tribunal is nothing more than a lottery. That's usually an attempt to try and make people settle it. I would say that you get a lot more security from buying a £2 lottery ticket than you do going to the employment tribunal in the UK. And I can understand why many lawyers don't want to go to court. But surprisingly, whistleblowers do want to go to court. They see that as their route to Damascus. That is their route to being vindicated. And I know myself, when I forced my lawyers to come to court with me, very reluctantly, that nobody was more surprised than them when I won. Because the reality is, and from studies and numbers that we've got prior to the APPG starting on this, was that only 3% of whistleblowers who go to the employment tribunal are successful. But you can still lose when you win because you don't get your costs back. And that's only one of the problems. You often also are blacklisted because it attracts, as much as we love the press, that acts as a double-edged sword for us. So it's my experience of this being part of this winning whistleblower group and the very negative effects it had on my career, because while I wasn't working for a really prestigious organisation, I was rather proud of being a chief exec of a charity and what we were achieving for the communities that we were working in. That being part of 3% is really not a very, it just didn't excite me. So after a few false starts, Whistleblowers UK was launched in 2015. We've since, despite all of the odds and against everything that the lawyers involved in these cases told us, they all advised us not to go to court, we won. And we've won 2 landmark cases. I won't talk about those today, but it's about the odds. And as a result of that, we've been able to help lots of other whistleblowers to resolve their cases. But win, draw or lose, whichever way you come out of this, justice is still really being denied to people. Because the current system does not allow the original issue that was raised, the fraud, the other crimes, the child abuse, whatever it may be, it doesn't allow that to be investigated. So what we do at Whistleblowers UK is we help whistleblowers to hold the mirror back up to the employer. We ensure that regardless of the win, lose or draw, that the light is shone on the wrongdoing. And we push that forward. We continue to fight for justice for the public, not just the whistleblower, because really the whistleblower is just a conduit to this. So I'm delighted to be here. Not because of the work that we do as Whistleblowers UK, but the fact that we're actually raising the profile of whistleblowing. And I make no apology for pointing out that over the last year, working with the APPG, we've now seen over 100 non-disclosure agreements that demonstrate that the law firms are the ones who are really facilitating wrongdoing, not just in the UK, but around the world. What they're supposed to do and what they actually do are 2 quite different things, and they're all shielded by this veil of privilege or fear. If you speak out after you've signed this. And we've seen examples of where whistleblowers have been afterwards reminded by their own lawyer, don't breach this non-disclosure order. So why more than 100 people have come to talk to us about this is quite amazing. So the campaign for legislative change began really back in 2015 when we started, and in 2017, Baroness Susan Kramer sort of noticed me, and she asked me to help her with the financial services bill for some amendments about whistleblowing and protecting whistleblowers. I did try to get it in there that people who retaliate should go to jail. Needless to say, that slipped through the cracks. But with what we're doing now, it's becoming much more of a reality. So Stephen Kerr is our current chairman, and when they got together and decided they would trust us and believe that what we were talking about was a really important issue, they set up the All-Party Parliamentary Group for Whistleblowing. And we've got now more than 40 MPs who are regularly engaging with us, and hence today's debate. They've got an ambition, our MPs in this group, to not only address but to resolve the injustices. They want to put the whistleblower at the top of the political agenda. And they also want to use this as an opportunity to draft and propose gold standard world-class whistleblower legislation. The UK used to lead the world. You know, the Americans would like to argue with us, but we still believe that in 1998, the Public Interest Disclosure Act was that piece of legislation upon which the whole EU directive that's just come out has been based upon. And they've put forward a lot of the amendments that we are proposing, but we're pushing further because we actually want an independent office for the whistleblower. Susan Kramer uses this term, which is whistleblowers should be cherished, because they are the first line of defence against crime, corruption, and cover-ups. And for anybody who's done this, that's what we are. So since October last year, we started in July. I then took the summer off to think about how we might do this, because APPG secretariats really are unpaid everything. You know, you do everything but the broom. You turn the light off when you finish. But we've now gathered coming up to 500 pieces of evidence from whistleblowers, of which financial services whistleblowers were the second highest category that came forward. That really bucks the trend with other organisations that we've worked with. And on top of that, we decided we'd start interviewing regulators. We've jumped ahead of the plan a bit. And what came out of the interviews with these regulators and whistleblowers is that everybody has a different understanding of what the legislation means. And much of that comes out of the fact that while whistleblowing is the term assigned to this action, it's not defined in law. So a huge part of what we're going to be debating this afternoon is, what is whistleblowing? It's great to roll out the stories, and we can all be really entertaining. I haven't written my book yet, but I'll perhaps get round to it. But it really is the fact that if you don't deal with the bigger issues, my organisation will just have its constant stream of wounded soldiers coming through the door. And that's what we're trying to stop. So, just check, I'm whizzing through my notes here because I don't want to go over the time. We have now constructed our first report incorporating the voice of the whistleblower. We haven't really touched on the regulator findings yet. We've just started hinting at it to hope that people want to read it and then read the next one and come and support us and work with us on this. But it's been drafted with us in Coventry University, so we've got some real academic rigour in it and some evaluation of the whistleblower experience. And the proposals that the whistleblowers have made are surprisingly aligned to what the university has come up with, what Transparency International and other great organisations like Protect have all come up with. So I think we're on the right lines here. More people than I could ever have hoped for came up with the idea of some kind of independent office for the whistleblower, and with regional offices. I'm just giving you sort of a few heads up. Lots of people came up with the idea of compensation. My goodness. The single biggest contentious area that we've had to face from MPs and the public, other whistleblowers and other groups, is that it's not British. I'd say put yourself in the position of the whistleblower with no money, facing being a litigant in person against some of the toughest, most expensive legal brains in the country who are being employed by the banks. Also, penalties, including custodial sentences for individuals. The likelihood is that is going to become a reality. A mandatory investigation of allegations as a first point of call by accredited independent investigators. Another great idea that's come out of this is ring-fenced employment and ongoing career monitoring to address issues like blacklisting and the cycle of abuse in which people are often exited on spurious reasons. Because again, the Employment Tribunal isn't interested in the Whistleblowing Act, only on the issues around the contract of employment. The two just don't touch each other. So also a fund to support whistleblowers beyond litigation, to be able to live their lives, because if you are a litigant, it is a full-time job, as I'm sure Michael will agree. Specialist tribunals, personally I'd like to see them gone altogether, but specialised tribunals with criminal and civil lawyers, judges involved, and accredited specialist lawyers. I think one of the better things that has come, sort of solutions that have come out of the civil society work that we're doing is mandatory training for all employees, but also whistleblowing awareness to be taught in schools so that people go into the workplace understanding the mechanisms of speaking out. Normalisation. A huge overhaul of all of the regulators. My joke with the FCA is they have a spare floor, and the amount of time I spend there, I might as well just move into it to save having to go back and forwards. Even Andrew Bailey now quite jokes about it. So you never know, it might become a reality. I would rather prefer, though, that they actually employed a number of our our whistleblowers to go and work at the FCA, because they would clear more work in 6 weeks than the FCA probably will do in 6 years. The other major area, I'm nearly there, is an extension of protection to all citizens. So as you can see, the APPG is rather ambitious in what it's looking to do. It has no legal status. It is just a collective group of people who have a shared ambition to see whistleblowing made history. And if anybody would like to help us, we would be more than happy to accept your help. Thank you.